Good evening, everyone. I am just going to get started with some of our quick bits that we have. We're gonna Sarah, do you have? We're gonna vote to accept the member. I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking. Wow, this is good.
Oh, you're fine.
Can you open what I'm trying to say?
Um, were you talking about the bod meeting minutes? We do that the next meeting.
No, the
No.
membership, the other thing that we have to accept other than budget.
The standing rules, we move that to the next meeting as well.
Oh, we did. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. I thought we were doing that today too. Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Katie Young. Just trying to figure out all that we're doing today. Sorry about that. I am one of the co-presidents of the Special Ed PTA. Sarah is our lovely other co-president. And we are going to be talking today all about behavior. Helen has joined us, and she has, I'm going to forget her name.
Jennifer.
Thank you. Sorry. It's
Okay.
just not my thing to remember names. I'm horrible. And Jennifer to talk to us about behavior and schools and what that looks like. And I'll let you guys get to it.
Oh, thanks, Katie. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And so everyone knows on Zoom where all the little faces are. If you want to get rid of that and see the entire screen, you can see a single line at the top. Do you see that? If you click on that, that'll all go away. So there's a single line, kind of a rectangle, and there's doubles, and then what are those?
A grid.
Yeah, thank you, a grid. If you click on the straight line, it'll hide the thumbnail, and all you'll see is just a little bar and who's talking. Up to you. If you want to see everybody's face, that's fine. Otherwise, you can see the screen better this way. So for those who don't know me, I'm Helen. I'm with Seal K-12, and Jennifer is sitting next to me, and I'll let her introduce herself too. But it was a bunch of years ago, Jennifer wrote a bio for me, and she wrote that I survive on coffee, Christ, and case law. And I've recently added what she doesn't know, craziness and chaos, because that just seems to be how this world's been recently, especially with the meetings I'm in. The behavior itself is the #1 reason parents reach out to me, and schools reach out to me, and outside providers reach out to me. And I did a little tally last fall for a presentation that I did, and behaviors was the #1 reason. IEP content was the other, but the top one was behaviors. So it's something that families and school staff and providers don't necessarily know they need it until they need it. And I'm really excited, especially since Jennifer's here and she's going to help a lot with the behavior part, because she's really kind of a geek with that. And I'll let her do that. So it's an area that's very near dear to my heart. It's an area also that really impacts so many kids in the educational setting. And we're just going to take it one step at a time. I have a little blurb, or actually Jennifer was great, put all these slides together. One of the things at CLK-12 is we believe that the student is the center of any discussion we have. In this paragraph here is also the mission statement for CLK-12. And our goal is to support students so they're receiving those special education and related service minutes. And I'm presuming Katie or Sarah, if somebody has a question, you will be able to jump in with that, because I'm not monitoring the chat or anything.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I got you.
One of my favorite sayings that I've been putting in PowerPoints this year is you don't know what you don't know until you know what you don't know. Because I have many parents that after I've talked to them, they go, well, we didn't know that. And I said, I know you didn't. But it's not just parents either. It's school staff. It's everyone. And we're just here to try to answer some of those questions. During this, we are making a few assumptions, and that is your student is on an IEP or you're familiar with an IEP. And I say familiar because nobody knows everything about IEPs. School staff don't, I don't, district directors don't, but that's the assumption in this part. And when I say an IEP, 504 is in there with behaviors also. Because when I'm talking about behaviors or when we get to the discipline part, section 504 is included in that. I'll let you click these. So all students are general education students. I even had a call today where a parent said, well, they can't suspend my child because they're special ed. Well, a student is still a general education student first. So they're a general education student, and then they have additional supports if they're a special education student as well. So behavior alone is not a reason to change a student's placement. And a placement has to do on an IEP with those service minutes and where those minutes are being served. And I've got reference down here to, you'll see SEC 1749. If you guys see that, hopefully you can see that. That is a special education. At that point, it was called a citizen complaint. It's a community complaint now, where it actually talks about placement. And then when I have that OSPI TAP number, even if you do a Google search and you type in OSPI TAP number 6, it will take you to that document that will talk about placement and what districts are required to consider during that process. I use these references a lot. I'll give you a second if you want to write those down. We'll also send a copy of this over to Katie and Sarah in case you want to share it with anybody who's been attending today. So in those community complaints I was talking about, and also that TAP, we talk about related services and supplementary aids and services. So all students who are special education and general education students have access to what's called a related service and also supplementary aids and services. And if you want more information other than here, that you have the Washington codes here and you have the CFR, which is the federal codes. But if you get onto the SEAL website and you go under documents, there's actually a document that goes through each one of those pieces as well and explains examples of each one. It's not necessarily as limited as you think it is. That's why it's important you can get on and take a look at some of those examples. You can jump in anytime if you have something you want to add. The continuum of placement for students. All students, because they're general education students, have the right to be in the general education environment. And then the next step to that, and that's their least restricted environment, is to be in general education with supports. That previous slide, when we talked about related services and supplementary aids and services, that's what they can have in the general education. Now, the next placement to consider is a resource room. And resource room is a pull-out model, and that's where they're in a resource classroom, which is different than self-contained. We're just giving you a little bit of basic information and wanted to give you some of the codes that go with this. Often you'll hear the word about inclusion, and there is no thing in the IDEA that references inclusion. It is the least restrictive environment for a student. I see there's a couple of comments. I'll let them check. There's the Code of Federal Regulations for you and the Washington Administrative Codes. Did you want to add anything to this screen? Okay.
No, thank you.
So we're all here for behavior. So all behavior is communication. If you also get on the SEAL website, under documents, under behavior and school discipline, there's a document on behavior, general education, and a document for behavior and special education as well. And that would give you some more of those codes if you wanted to actually take a look at them and go from there. And I'm going to let Jennifer go from here in regards to talking about the ABC of behavior.
This is exciting. So think of behavior as linear. There's an antecedent, a behavior, and a consequence. The antecedent is what happens directly before a behavior. Then there's the behavior, and a behavior is an observable, measurable act, something that has happened, usually a verb. And then C, the consequence, what happens directly after. So you'll hear the term ABC data. You'll hear the antecedent intervention, things like those phrases. So think of ABC, and then the next slide, we'll go through an example of application. So here's an example. I'll just read it. Nancy's at the reading group table. The teacher gives Nancy a book to read. Nancy throws the book on the ground. The teacher instructs Nancy to leave the reading group table and return to her desk. So the antecedent in this situation is Nancy is handed a book to read. The behavior, which is measurable and observable, is Nancy throws the book on the ground. Then the consequence is Nancy's told to leave the reading group table and return to her desk. That would be your data. You could look at it in those 3 steps. It's pretty clear what's going on. And then I'll show you what to do with that. This is a phrase to think of, that all human behavior is maintained by reinforcement. So the plus and minus, kind of hold that in your head for a second when we go through the next slide, which think of, there's reinforcement, and the opposite of reinforcement is punishment. Reinforcement increases a behavior, punishment decreases a behavior. And we're going to talk about why you want to choose which one and why the other is not, it's an option, but not the most effective in all scenarios. So here's the example. There's positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Don't think of positive and negative as only good or bad. Think of it as addition or subtraction. So positive reinforcement is you're adding something. So in this case, a behavior occurs. The book was thrown to the ground, for example, consistently and reliably followed by the addition of something good. So in this example up on the screen, Doug gets an extra 10 minutes of iPad for finishing his math assignment. He's getting the addition of 10 minutes of iPad. So he wants that iPad. That's a positive reinforcement. Then he's more likely, the increase of behavior, he's more likely to finish his math work now. And then we go on the cycle. The next day, he does finish his math work because he's given that extra 10 minutes. We're adding something to the environment that is making the new behavior go up or an increase. This is negative reinforcement. So don't think of it as bad. It's the removal of something bad. So in the example here, Sheldon doesn't like PE. He throws a tantrum when PE starts. The teacher says, go to resource room. He throws himself on the ground when PE starts. The removal of a bad PE experience is reinforcing to him. So that behavior is also going to happen for any class because he's going to try it. We're taking away something bad. And then the next, oh, no, I'm afraid I'm gonna mess it up.
Fine.
Then you have opposite of that. So those are the increase of behavior. Inversely, you have the punishment. So in here, you're decreasing a behavior by adding something bad. So in this example, he falls out of the chair, he hurts himself. The injury is you're adding to the environment. Think of this would be you're adding extra work. Oh, the team messed up and talked back to the coach. They have to run an extra lap. You're adding something bad that they don't want to the environment. That's a positive punishment. And then the opposite of that would be a negative punishment. You're removing something good. So this would be like you're grounded, recess is taken away from you. It's something that you want that is taken away, and it will decrease a behavior. So then this is why you want to choose positive or negative reinforcement over punishment. When you're looking at the behavior is happening for a reason, and you want to take that reason and replace it with the behavior that you want them to do. So I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. I don't have one on here. The punishment, though, by contrast, the punishment's only, you might lose the behavior, but they still have a reason for that behavior. So you're going to get a decrease in that behavior, and then you're going to shoot up and get an increase because you haven't given a comparable behavior that serves that function and literally replaces. You want to come up. I think of the example, I'm stirring soup at the stove. I want to stir soup at the stove, and I ask my husband, can you hand me a spoon? If he hands me a ladle, I will make do. I'm replacing, I can still stir. If he hands me a colander, not going to work out and my function is off. So kind of think of it that way. You need to do the thing, you will replace it, but it needs to work for you. Otherwise, it's not a replacement.
So I'm going to stop you for a minute.
Yeah.
Because as many meetings that I'm in, I come back to the functions of the behavior, and it didn't dawn on me till recently. There's only 4 functions. And we have actually an overview that we're going to show that as well. But I love the fact that it's so clear. So we all have functions of our behavior. So I want every one of you to think for a minute about how you acted at some point today. Like I was grumpy today. So I started laughing, thinking, oh, what is the function of my behavior? But you can do this even if you have kiddos at home. Everything that you want to change and give a replacement behavior, you discover what the function of the behavior is first. Go ahead.
And
Sorry.
there are only 4. They can serve multiple functions, but there are only 4 functions. Some people argue there's a 5th called control. All of these you're controlling your environment. And so there's sensory, think of them in this order because then it makes the acronym SEAT: sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. And they fit, every behavior will fit into at least one of those categories. And then this breaks down an example for sensory. These are the things that you do automatic. These are the behaviors that feel good. These would be illnesses. You get your fidgets, the toe tappers, the people who kind of the stimming. That's your sensory. And they don't do it. They'll do it alone. They'll do it without thinking. It's automatic. Escape. Those are the behaviors. You're elopers. Those are, I want to get out of something. Those are make it go away. Attention, I'm doing this. I'm looking at you. I need your attention. Think of 2-year-old mom, mom, mom. That's kind of, those are some obvious examples. And then tangible is a thing. It's an experience. It's an item. You're adding, I want something. I want recess. I want stickers. I want coffee. So
yeah, let's be clear. I want coffee. So this is the 4 functions of behavior. This is currently now on the SEAL website. So if you went to the SEAL website, sealk12.org, if you go to documents, it's one of the first ones that we put up there, 4 functions. By all means, use this. You want to talk through it, or?
I think I've tried to put on some good examples. So think of questions to ask yourself. Why would somebody be doing this? What could this look like? If it can serve, there's a phrase I'm going to throw out, but just be careful with it. It's kind of a behavior chain. It can serve one function and then kind of morph into serving a couple others. And think of behavior, it's taught, which means they've learned it, it works. That's why you do it. That's why it's reinforced. You do what works for you until it doesn't. Then that's why you want to replace it. So you want to meet them with something that also works, but is just as easy to do and is functional to you. It's going to work. It's going to serve that function. Can't say function enough, I think. Oh, this is exciting. Okay, so this is data. You want, there's 2 words to think of: objective, and then you want an operational definition first. So your objective, you want your data to be measurable. You want it to be facts. You don't want any perspective. You don't want any interpretation. You want raw fact. Operational definition means that you're describing the behavior so that it's clear, observable, and measurable. This would be, you can't just say aggressive. You want to define aggressive through the book, kicked furniture, something of those lines. These are some examples of data. You can look for frequency. How often is a behavior happening? And that's simply tallies. The duration is if they're having a meltdown in class, how long is the meltdown? If they're eloping, how long is the elopement? Permanent product is a convenient one in the sense that, think of permanent product. Teachers already have to keep copious amounts of data because that's how grades are set up. That's what the state is looking for. Permanent product could be your attendance to class, your grades in class. What does homework look like? What is, especially if you have IEP goals, they have monthly things they're going through. That's data. What is the result of something? If all of their pencils are chewed and you look through and I have 5 chewed pencils, probably sensory going on, or a fidgeter, I have 5 chewed pencils. That's your permanent product. Teacher report. What do the teachers see? You could have a daily communication sheet with a rubric that's going through the day, that's to kind of showing you, you'll look for some trends, some hot spots, and then observation. Can someone go in there and keep ABC data? Can someone go in there and observe and catch things that a teacher can't necessarily catch? There's probably more than one student in the classroom, so you got a lot going on. And then we talk about the rubrics down the bottom and customizable tables. Keep it, you want your data, it's not going to do you any good if it's so complex you can't actually keep it. So you want to somehow keep things where you're just telling, circling, make it easy and convenient, and then
you
it's
have a
usable.
definition.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Supports. I love supports. This is back to the continuum that we talked about, and the supports as a related service or a supplementary aid in service. And I know we used acronyms, which I'm not always fond of. So we're going to talk through. Most of you know what a para is. An RBT. Why don't you go ahead and describe some of those, and then I'll take it from there.
So an RBT is a registered behavior technician. They're overseen by a board certified behavior analyst, and it's mandatory that they're overseen by X number of hours. And your RBT is trained in behavior. Your BCBA is extra trained in behavior. And then SLP is speech and language pathologist.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right? Okay. And then intervener. Intervener is trained exclusive to the deafblind and those services. So they help with compensating for those sensory deficits.
So when we're talking about the continuum of placement, and a student should be in general education first, that's the first place, with supports. These are some of the supports. When I talk to families, even districts are surprised when I say, well, it doesn't have to be just a paraeducator. Many districts now will say, well, our paraeducators aren't trained, they don't know anything. All right, well, if we have behaviors, that's not going to help us, correct? So then we ask for that RBT, or we ask for whatever support that's needed in the classroom to help the student. For a second, I'm going to sidetrack a little. It is important to understand that not attending and not going to school is also a behavior. And a lot of people don't recognize that. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit in the future too. But the least restrictive environment is that general education environment. Where should they be and what support should they need? AAC is your augmentative and alternative communication device. Accommodations, that's what's listed on the IEP. You'll see there's accommodations, modifications, and then supports for school personnel. What does the student need to be successful? One of the areas that isn't looked at a lot is that supports for school personnel, because do you need an occupational therapist to come in and do some training with school staff? Do you need the district BCBA to come in and do some training of as staff as well? And then the functional behavior assessment is an assessment that can create the behavior intervention plan that can be added to the IEP. It's part of the IEP. Any more you want to? Nope. Okay.
Okay, we have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Katie.
No worries. And can we go back to the previous slide just for a second?
Yep.
Because I have a question as well. Cool. So Jasmine asked if we can request the data.
Oh, yes, you can. You can request the data. Now, I have found that a lot of times the data isn't there or they don't have it.
Yet.
Yeah, right, yet. But yes, as a parent, you are allowed to have anything that's that a district keeps. So also not just the data, but if any staff takes notes or takes notes during a meeting, you can ask for that data. And I love rubrics in terms of how we collect data. It's very easy. It's harder to set up, but it's easy to collect data because at that point it's just check marks once we've already done our descriptors that we need. Did that answer the question, Jasmine?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And Katie,
And then the question I had real quick is, are we going to go into more the actual process and timeline with FBAs, BIPs?
we don't
data
have that on
collection.
slides. Sorry, Katie. We don't have that on a slide, but I absolutely can because for a functional behavior assessment, and I think that's one of our next slides, it is an assessment like any assessment is and has the same time requirements. So yes, we'll go over that.
Okay.
Good question. Functional behavior assessments. Here is, if you want to look at the CFRs in terms of what the U.S. Department of Defense says about functional behavior assessments. What's interesting, in the IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, there is only one time that an FBA is required, and it's during a manifestation process. And when we get to the discipline part, we'll talk briefly about that. But a manifestation termination review is after a student who is special ed, and that includes 504, it has been suspended for more than 10 school days in a calendar year, not 10 at one time, but 10 total. And then they're required to do that FBA and to take a look at why. The other time, and we're going to talk about that also, is when we're talking about a truancy or a student that doesn't want to attend school. There's requirements a district has in regards to looking at a functional behavior assessment and doing one and providing a behavior plan, collecting data, and then going from there to see if a student needs to be removed from the enrollment. So the FBA is an assessment that requires parental consent. It is like an assessment that you signed for an evaluation for special education. Once you sign the consent, the district has 35 school days, not calendar days, school days before they need to be in a meeting with the parent to discuss the results that they found. So as part of those results, they also have to determine whether you're going to do a behavior plan or not. And the data should be in there. We'll go over a little more of that as well. There is no requirement for who does an FBA assessment. In some schools, it could be the case manager, the special education teacher. You can ask for, so sometimes it's the school psychologist. You can have your BCBA for the school district do it. Sometimes it's a progression as well. The person that has the most information, the most background and behavior collects, I think, a little bit different data, and it's more detailed. A parent can absolutely request for an FBA. An FBA is, I don't know, look at like it's a mystery. Let's figure out what's going on with the student. And it's how we address those challenges under the to provide that FAPE to a student. So here's another document that's currently on this, that we just put on the SEAL website. It's a functional behavior assessment checklist. A family, school staff, anybody could take this information as you're looking at an FBA. I used with this with a parent just this week, and it was really easier then to go over the document because, quite frankly, most districts in this area use IEP Online, and their form is extremely repetitive and redundant, which is fine, and they know, schools know that. But this helped break it down. So I asked the parent about the target behavior. We realized in the case of one this week that we really didn't have a good description of what the target behavior was. If you can't clearly define it, then we can't actually come up with replacement behaviors. And then looking at the function of the target behavior, once we actually got through with the meeting, we realized we thought missed the sensory component of it. And so we were able to go through that. The data collection, Jennifer's talked about data. She loves data, right? Yeah. And then in the form itself, if they're using IEP online in regards to whether they should do a behavior plan, they typically look at the replacement behavior. And I think it's important that families look at the replacement behavior and whether you agree with it or not, because it has to serve as the same function. Remember those 4 things we talked about? And it's got to replace why they're doing the behavior. So if your child is, I'm trying to think of a funny example, but some of them are inappropriate, I guess. Sorry. If your child's coming home and throwing their food at dinner or something, I mean, that's a behavior, and you want to figure out what why they're doing the behavior, and then do the replacement or the target behavior from that. I didn't say that well. You might want to say it differently. And then from there, the team actually agrees, and the parent has a say. Many times parents say to me, well, the district doesn't give me an option. Well, in this case, often, yes, they do. And should there be a behavior plan that's going to address the target behavior that's listed? So the IDEA states that a behavior intervention plan is based upon that FBA, and we just added the federal codes in there if you wanted to do more research on it. I'll let you do it now.
My turn.
That's right, your turn.
So then you do the FBA, first the FBA, then you create a behavior intervention plan. You agree on the target behavior, then you come up with the replacement behavior, serves the same function. And then you're going to create a strategy to reinforce the replacement behavior. And this is the part where you want to be careful of your fidelity and you want to keep data. If the replacement behavior is truly increasing, then you are truly reinforcing it. If it's not, or it's going down, or it's stagnant, then you need to look back and you are not actually reinforcing it. So your reinforcement isn't effective. Pick a different reinforcement, or the team should reconvene and go over that data again, because the idea is the target behavior is decreasing because the new behavior that you're reinforcing that should be replacing, you're teaching, you've got strategies to teach that, and then it should be sliding into place. Did that make sense?
Is there a time frame for how long before you determine if it's actually changing or replacing the behavior?
It takes a while. It depends on the behavior. I would caution thinking too quickly, because some behaviors have stuck around for a while. I tease and call them calcified, which means they've worked for a really long time. Why would I want to get rid of it? Like old habit.
Like a student who doesn't want to do work when they're at school.
Yeah, and if it's been a few months, why
Or years.
would I change it right away?
Okay.
I'm not interested. But if you catch a behavior, I like to catch them when it's green and it's little and it starts right away, and you can kind of jump in there and shape it quick. Don't let it grow roots.
Yeah. So here's some examples let's go back to the behavior. Does anybody have any specific questions about that before we go on to some discipline? Yeah.
What if, is that where the data collection and requesting the data is important? Because I'm getting behaviors here at home, but they're stating they're not seeing behaviors at school.
Well, I would guess they are seeing behaviors at school, but they're probably different behaviors. And so you could apply these same principles at home to extinguish or change some of the behaviors. And Jennifer, I'll let her talk to that for a minute, because I know she does that at home herself. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, there can also be a behavior contrast where certain behaviors will be happening at school and not at home, and vice versa.
Okay.
Sometimes what's happening is you're holding it together at school to be the little robot, and then you come home and you feel safe, and you just kind of you put on your slippers, you put your feet up, and you just I had a hard day. Or if it's something, sometimes it would take a conversation. I don't think everybody looks at behaviors the same way across environments. So ask questions, have those open conversations and emails of just, are you seeing anything like this? Or asking, that's where it's kind of fun to play with the schedule and see, I'm noticing math worksheets are always coming home folded up, ripped up, wadded up. Is math hard? Is math stressful? And then kind of tease that out with the teacher, or if you happen to have a para, or if you have special education services that kind of can help with that information, that's data. Those kinds of things, I think, kind of point you into, well, then it sounds like we have a behavior. And then maybe it's academic based, maybe it's escape. I don't know. From there, you can kind of figure out that function.
How do we deal with behaviors that are crossing the school home threshold? Because it's like the antecedent is school and the behavior is happening at home. Because we're seeing in chat that Jasmine is not alone in this occurrence. I had that experience with my child. Another person in Jody had the same thing. And they always say, oh, he's so kind or he's so good. And you see an animal that's shredding your house.
Oh, so it's
Mhm.
behavior's not happening at school and then it's happening at home.
And I don't know if Jody happens to have the same struggle I'm currently having, but there's been a lot of communication barriers and communication breakdown, and it's becoming a very big complication.
Whose barriers? The students or
The school communicating with me.
okay, then that's where it would be handy to have like a communication sheet where it's not personal, there's not narrative, it's just the teacher wants to be supported too, and they want a successful student too. They probably think of their own behavior. They want it to go well. They want a negative reinforcement. They want, I would be asking, is homework getting turned in? Things like that. What does it look like?
Well, you can add homeschool communication to the accommodations, but you have to take it a step further and send a list to the school team of what information you want to see. Do you want to see how, like, for instance, some kiddos, how long was their seat time? Were they able to sit and do work for 3 minutes, 15 minutes? It depends upon the abilities of the student as well. That's important information. Do you want to know how often they use the bathroom that day? I mean, those are things that I would send in a list asking if it's not already, the communication sheet isn't already on the IEP. I would ask that it goes on there, and here's what I want to keep track of. Once you come up with what you want to know, most of the time it's pretty easy for them to do it because it should just be a rubric, which is a checklist.
Okay. I may need to like sit down and be refreshed by you, Helen, too, because it's been rusty and I haven't had a heck of a time getting, effective communication.
And the other way to do that is also ask for some records too, because I'd be curious what records they're keeping at the school. And so, yes, that was Jasmine. We could talk about it. So absolutely. So I'm going to move on to examples of school discipline really quick. These are just some of them, and parents are supposed to be notified. And you're laughing, Jennifer. Stop laughing.
Well, you said supposed to.
I did say that correctly. If there's a pattern or frequency of discipline, that's that whole process with behavior. We need to do the FBA. We need to look at a BIP. So classroom exclusion. Well, first of all, if you get on the SEAL website under documents, under school behavior and school discipline, there is a document that's called Discipline Overview for all students, and there's one for special ed. And the reason there's two different ones is we have that manifestation process that's in place if a student is a special education student, and there's requirements with that. And when I explain discipline or suspensions to families, I always think about two different flow charts. Put both of your hands out. Your student is a general education student first. You can follow the appeal. That's right. You can follow the appeal process. That's one of it. The other part is the special education process, which is the manifestation process. Was it due to their disabilities? I hear over and over from families, well, they can't suspend my child because they're special education. That is absolutely not true. But there are protections for a student who is special ed. So a classroom exclusion is a new rule that was adopted. Let's see, those rules came in, I have it written down because I knew I remembered, in July of 2018. And classroom exclusion is one. I talk about this a lot because if a student is not in their environment, then they are not learning. So if they're out in the hall because they got in trouble, that they are not allowed to do that anymore, and they're supposed to actually let the parents know. And there's a form they fill out, and I see those almost nowhere. If the student is sent to the office and is sitting in the office until they quote unquote calm down, that is a classroom exclusion. They are removed from their learning environment, and we're supposed to be keeping track of that because guess what? That's data. I know you like that. I think it's a really important one. Well, we moved them into another space, and I said, and I would always say, but you've excluded them from the learning environment. Each school district and parents, if the parents are on, don't be afraid to go to the school district and ask for their policies and procedures. Ask for their policy on classroom exclusions. They're required to have one. So there's no set amount of time. It's anywhere from about 2 or 3 minutes, and I've seen one that's 15, which technically is longer than OSPI, so your state agency would say. And they'll tell you how long a student can be out of the classroom. And after that time period, it becomes an exclusion itself. It's a very interesting one I love. Some of you have heard me talk about Dave Pilkey, who wrote Captain Underpants. He said when he was in elementary school, that's how he wrote Captain Underpants, because he was out in the hallway most of the time. And there's also a document on the SEAL website about classroom exclusions, and it gives you some examples of those. The other one is restraint and isolation. For a long time, I always called it isolation and restraint. I don't know why, that's just how my brain was working. There is also a document on the SEAL website about that. And this is a really interesting one. And I say interesting because when I hear things that school staff talk to me about, I'm realizing they are isolating or restraining a student, and they don't realize or want to realize they're doing that. So if they're, for instance, if they're preventing a student from walking outside a room, or if they are putting their hands on a student and guiding them somewhere else, that the school staff are not allowed to do that. And that's part of the reporting requirement. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the restraint and isolation. See, I still am doing it the wrong way. When I talk about emergency response protocols. So there are several also types of suspensions, and then we have emergency expulsions. The WAC codes still call it an emergency expulsion. There's a couple of school districts that are calling them removals. And this document is is it on the website too? May not be, can't remember. If you need that document, you can reach out to SEAL and we'll send it out to you, or I can get it to you as well. So here's that classroom exclusion, the new one. Here's the WAC codes if you want to take a look at it, and it's in regards to a behavioral violation that takes place, and that the school districts are required to notify the student's parent. Now, think about yourself. Have you received any notification that your student was out of their placement, or out of their let's say they're in general education? If they're out of that environment, it's a classroom exclusion. I've been talking to a couple directors recently who are starting at the high school level and talking to them about some of these requirements, because they don't understand that, and that they're not allowed to do it, even though they have done it for years. That law went into effect, I think right before COVID, which is, I think, where some of the confusion is, and I'm being generous. But it's important that they take a look at that. So restraint and isolation, put the brief definition, but there's a huge document. Some of you say, oh my gosh, my eyes cross when I read your documents, Helen, but it's a lot of really good information, and it's really important. Again, we're going to talk about it could be the next one. Let me look. Nope, suspensions. Short-term suspensions is when a student is excluded from school for up to 10 consecutive days. And there are some requirements in regards to what grade the student is in regards to how long they can keep them out. And again, these apply, all of the students, special ed students are general education student first. So all of these apply to them. There's also in-school suspensions, and not as many schools have in-school suspension placements anymore. All of these suspensions, though, if they're in school short term, they have to be given access to an educator in terms of helping them keep up with their classroom activity. And then here's the emergency expulsion. It can only be up to 10 school days, and then it needs to be converted into either a suspension, a short-term suspension. I haven't seen a long-term suspension or expulsion for any special education student in many years, but it does need to be converted. All of these would generate reasons to collect data because we're talking about a behavior a student's doing. So a school district must attempt one or more forms. And there are, and I think the next slide's going to show that, there are ways to get in on OSPI. They list different forms of behavioral expectations that staff can try to do with the student. My biggest bugaboo about the second bullet here is, and I know this is really hard for some parents, no, you do not go and pick your student up because they're not able to manage your student. If they are going to, you need to ask for suspension paperwork. I know that's scary. I know as a parent, you don't want your child acting out. You don't want them hurting anyone. But that reporting process gives you more data and more information. A student has the right to be at school with their peers all day long. So at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, they have a technical paper. If you typed in OSPI technical paper number 2, it will come up, and it talks about the discipline procedures for special education students. It gives you the WAC codes, gives you the CFRs that you want. And the fact that school districts are required to have policies and procedures on how they document disciplinary action. Including detentions. And a detention, I know that's an interesting word, but it's like classroom exclusion. You go to the office, you sit there, you don't get to do anything. The big one I wanted to talk about is emergency response protocols. An emergency response protocol, a parent has to agree to one. And a district can put their hands on any student, general ed, remember they're all general education students, special education students, if they are harm to themselves or to someone else. There is an advanced educational planning, and it talks about specific areas, but the emergency response protocol is what they're talking about. For those of you who are on IEP Online and you have the service minutes, after the service minutes, there is those check boxes. One has transportation, one has
ESY.
And then there's ESY on there, and right after ESY is an ERP. I tell my parents not to agree to an ERP unless. So the staff who picks up a student to move them to another location, if they don't have an ERP, that's putting hands on a student and they're not allowed to do it. I kind of look down and frustrated because I know that happens too often. What I give as an example is, let's say the school's policy is, if a student wants to elope out of the building, we just let them elope and follow them. But if the parent wants them to prevent them from walking out of the building, we can do an ERP, and it's written into the plan that the door is going to be held, and so they can't get out. That's what an ERP is for. And it has to be agreed to with the parent, and it has to be a part of the IEP. What some, I think, don't understand, the school staff, is it's only when reasonably necessary to control spontaneous behavior. And there's that imminent harm piece. So I don't know if anybody has a question of it. When I see an ERP marked as yes, Often, not often, I always have the conversation with the parent in terms of what they want to do with that and whether we should remove the request for it. Because it's really important. If your teacher comes up and grabs your arm to take you somewhere, they are not allowed to do that because they put their hands on the student. I don't, you might want to talk about that for a minute, because I don't even know what to say about that sometimes. It just is
I'm
frustrating.
speechless, Helen.
Yeah, yeah, so am I. And that's important if we're
Just don't
both
do it.
speechless. Yes. So truancy is another document that we just put up on the SEAL website. Truancy is about attendance. And there's an RCW. Now, I talk to school district directors about this all the time because they'll tell me they're going to file a truancy petition, which is different than just a truancy letter. Or they're going to unenroll a student, and I'll go, you can't. You have not done the RCW yet. And on the document, if you want to pull it up, I've talked about it from, I've given you the exact verbiage for a special education student, because this is one of the times they have to do an FBA. They have to be in a meeting with the parent. Again, the document explains it. They have to be in the meeting with the parent. They have to talk about doing an FBA. They have to collect the data. They have to write a behavior plan, and they have to collect data on that behavior plan and see if it's working or not before they can remove a student from attendance. There's also a section in that document that talks about students who are not special educations, don't have special education services, and that could be a child fine that kicks in. Child fine is not just children who are preschool. I know a lot of school districts even refer to their child fine department, and it's their preschool group. Child fine can happen for a student at any age. Yeah, you laugh. Can happen at any age. So if you're concerned about absences, you definitely want to know about that RCW, and it's listed on the document on the SEAL website. We're done. I know. Does anybody have any questions, or a million, or none? I'm going to go off this screen. Where is it?
The red one.
Oh, thank you.
Glad I could help.
Yeah, there's our people. There is our people.
That was a lot of information. I feel I loved it. I loved it. I went through ABA with our son, and there was even more in-depth information in there than before that I didn't know about. So I loved it. Thank you.
I've been having fun walking around the house going, I really need coffee. Is this a behavior? And then looking at those functions of my behavior going, what should I do to replace it? No, I just definitely need
We can shape each other.
Yes,
Spouses,
yes.
friends.
I mean, we all have behaviors all the time, right? I mean, we do. That's who we are as human beings. So, but no, by all means, ask us any questions you want. I have a lot of more discipline documents that are not on the SEAL website. So, parents don't know they need them until they need them. The manifestation determination review meeting that I talked about is when a student has been suspended, a special education student, for more than 10 days in a calendar year. And that's when the manifestation process has to take place. Now, at the 11th day, so we have that manifestation, and I have a document. Get a hold of me and I can send it to you. I don't put it on because you don't know you need it until you need it. And then let's say a student goes, if we determine it's due to their disability, they immediately can go back to school. And from there, the next thing we do is, let's say 2 days later, they're suspended again. We have to do another manifestation meeting because we're past that 10 days. So it's not like we just do it once in a calendar year. And I'll try to stop talking because I could talk about behavior and school discipline all day. So, because it's what I do pretty much all day.
So when it comes to these kiddos that are crossing over and behavior is happening at home, and we know that it's stemming from school in some manner, is the communication log then the data collection to some degree? Or do we still ask for the FBA and then work with the team to modify the data collection piece as at home, you know?
Those are two great questions, Katie. The first one would be, yes, the communication between home and school can be used as part of your data. But if we don't do an FBA and then a behavior plan, because if we have a behavior plan, everyone is supposed to follow it at school. Technically, your bus drivers, your janitor, whoever comes into contact with that student is supposed to use the replacement behavior, the strategies in that behavior plan. I got caught right for a minute on your comment about kids that are coming home because they're having behaviors, or I can't remember how you worded it, Katie, but sometimes kids have behaviors because they don't want to go to school too. And that's not just necessarily attendance and truancy. It's just like, who doesn't want to come home? A lot of kids would rather go home because they can play their Game Boy or be on their phone more, or, you know, whatever it is. So
No, I think that, and I appreciate this because I had this issue with Carter when he was younger. And Jasmine, I don't know how old your son is, but I can imagine it's probably elementary age.
No, he's actually a teenager. I have two severely autistic, nonverbal twin boys.
Okay. Okay. So it's like burnout almost, right? Like they've held it together all day and they're burning out at the end of the day. So that's where I'm like, the behavior isn't happening at school, but it's caused by school. So like, you know, things I think about that situation. I'm like, all right, sensory breaks, being able to request breaks and actually getting them, because sometimes that's an issue. They can request a break and the teacher, the para, whomever keeps pushing them to stay when they really truly need the break. So
For me too, like it was for a while there, it was musical paras for him. And you know, I was like, okay, that's probably the behavior. Well, now he's got a parrot, and I'm kind of, I still haven't met her in person. I've got health issues that are impeding my abilities lately. But aside from that, you know, I haven't met her in person. I just get the notes from her, and it's like, okay, guys, you know, I've got a disability here too. We need to find an effective way to communicate, and I need to find an effective way to be able to be participating, because I don't think she's working well with him.
here's some interesting thoughts about that as well, because if you're working with a good team, they will know that they're pushing a student too much if they're coming home and having behaviors. So whatever they're doing at school, they need to back off on those, whether they're pushing them and trying to engage them more. And those are really
too
important.
much change.
Right. Those are important things to pay attention to too. One of the things that I come back to often is I'm really into you know, are you an extrovert or an introvert? And if you're an introvert and you've been at work or you've been at school, you need that time to decompress and do something different. I don't know how you always can do that when kids are all coming home pretty much at the same time. But no, I would be definitely looking at the school team and saying, hey, I just need to take a look at what's going on. Are we doing too much pushing at school? Because they're probably exhausted and they can't tell you, obviously. So
Well, what about those that are in gen ed and sensory affects them?
Yeah.
They're in a gen ed
So,
set.
so for our
Not
kiddo,
gen ed permanently, but you know, get exposed to maybe that high school crowd, and that can be sensory overwhelming for a normal person, much less autism.
so for my kiddo who's in middle school, which I think some of the sensory stuff is coming in, I'm very lucky that he has gotten pretty good at advocating for himself. So he actually asked the teacher if he could leave 2 minutes early from his class to avoid the crowds in the hallways because the noise was overstimulating. He started eating lunch in the nurse's office to avoid the cafeteria because it was too noisy.
Yeah.
I think the nurse loves it. Totally creeps me out that he wants to eat in the place with the most germs in the whole building.
Yeah, I agree.
But we're working around that one a little bit. But things like that, like school, I feel like a lot of times Carter is able to think outside of the box way better than his teachers are and find what fits and what he needs. One of his classes, he has science at fourth period. His lunch they do half the science class, then they do lunch, then they do half the science class. It's the worst possible class for him to have split in the middle like that with a stressful, social, loud experience.
Yeah.
And he kept asking his para for a break after lunch. And the para's like, you just had a break. And what the para didn't realize was lunch was the stressor, not the class.
Yeah, and it's even more like important for me to take the data and try to like translate across the borders because he is nonverbal. So I have to assume every behavior is him trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
What's interesting, Katie and Jasmine, about sensory is it's the most, in my opinion, misunderstood in the school system, because I had an example from this week, a kiddo who's young, because there's a lot of really tough kiddos right now in that pre-K, first grade, and they're going outside, and when they're actually running around, they'll just start smacking at everybody. It's not, they're not trying to be mean. It is actually a way to understand their sensory environment. Our kiddo, when he was really little, he would smack people at Disneyland, and I went, what is he doing? But people don't understand that sensory component and how it's impacting them. And one of the things that's helpful to add on to the IEP is that supports for school personnel. You bring the OT, it doesn't matter if they qualified for occupational therapy, they come in then and should be teaching staff how to look at that sensory piece that's taking place.
Yeah, I think sensory is a big miss where my kiddo goes.
One of my funniest stories about Carter when he was younger is he has issues with interoception, which is the ability to understand what your body's doing. So he has high pain threshold. He wouldn't know he was sick. But the biggest one was he would always get kind of out of control. And they're like, we don't know what happened. And then all of a sudden he's calm again. He had to poop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't know he had to poop until he had to poop right then, you know? And so it was so funny because then as soon as he was done pooping, it was like this physical reset and he was calm and fine again.
Yeah, I found constipation is a big challenge for these kids. And when they're constipated, their behaviors just go, woo. You're like, oh, hey, wait a minute.
Think of ourselves, and when we're any amount of pain, we have a headache, we're not quite our best when we
well, even just hangry, like we talked about earlier. I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Don't mess with me when I'm hangry or tired. That's what I always say to my husband.
Well, and for chronic pain patients, you know, I think we have a better experience of kind of what they go through, because I don't know about Helen, but I don't know, some days I'm just like crabby with everybody and everything. I'm like, just get away from me.
One of the things I didn't say at the beginning, for the people who are still on, I know sometimes people try to get a hold of me and it can be really hard sometimes. But even if you reach out to Sarah or Katie, and they can certainly let me know or get a document that you need. We're trying to make some changes when we do our board retreat next month, to free me up a little bit more to answer some questions, because even that manifestation process when kids are suspended, it's a scary time for parents. And I want to be able to spend my time in that area, because it's not parents that are calling me. I get calls from state like DDA, your Department of Disability, because they want me to jump in and help support a team. And that's what we need to do, because just having the student outside of the school process is not where they belong. So
yeah, I'm having problems. Even my DDA case manager is just in awe with my personal experience. He's just going, what the wait, huh? And so am I personally. I thought I escaped this school twilight zone stuff like a little while back, and then teenager comes in and it's like, oh wait, I feel like I'm like new at this all over again.
Teenagers and hormones definitely make it new again.
Well, I'm glad
want to jump in.
That. Sometimes I feel like I'm going a little.
No, not at all. That's totally the case.
I was just going to jump in and just chime in with about the, transitioning from school to home, that even transition, and knowing that that's a transition for our kiddos, and just changing what we do, because the antecedent is the kids getting out of school. But what we can do is add another antecedent before that, is maybe we know that they're pent up. Maybe we go take them to the park, or maybe we do some extra heavy work, or maybe we do some extra sensory input like hugs and squishing and weighted blankets, and think about what it is that helps calm our kiddos, and maybe provide that for after school before putting on any requirements or pressures or requests onto them once they get home, right? Because then we all get home, we got to put our stuff away, we got to do this. Well, you know what? Drop it all at the front door and go do some calming strategies, and then come back. It's all still going to be there, right? And so every little bit that we can do with our kiddos. Yeah.
I have a kiddo that our front door is, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anybody.
No, you're right.
Our front door is narrow and he drops everything right there. And it's like the most annoying thing ever. And I've got to tell myself, okay.
Right.
Just, put it on the.
And Jennifer was saying sometimes they come home and they should do nothing at all. I mean, that's you set a
Space.
timer. Yeah. Yep. We need that space.
Like before my morning coffee, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Give me a minute. Like,
Oh my God, I wish that were
nothing,
true.
right?
I wish that could really happen.
Yeah, and then just maybe set a timer and let them know you get to be you for a minute.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and sometimes it could be not school, it could be the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, the bus is a sensory load for me. I don't put your kids in a small moving vehicle. Yay.
And traffic. I don't know if traffic's bad everywhere else, but in Puyallup, it's whoa, what happened?
Yeah, it could be a lot.
Yep. Does anybody have any other questions that we can answer before we get off tonight?
All right, then I'm going to take this minute to tell all of our lovely participants that we are about to launch our fundraiser for the Special Ed PTA. We're planning on doing a walk, roll, or run-a-thon at Mount Tahoma on June 15th. You should be receiving information about it via your school teachers this week coming up. And we'll also post stuff on our webpage and our Facebook page in case you guys don't get it from your teacher. You can always sign up. We're going to have a really fun event. We're going to have vendors and organizations come that we've been in interactions with. We're going to have some food trucks and some Kona ices and hopefully have a really nice day on June 15th in the sun and get to meet each other. Yay! Sarah. Anybody last call for questions for Helen? Do we have any specific to your kiddo? You're more than welcome to hop on and ask.
Yes, I have a question for you guys. So, Helen, this is Nael Mateo. We've been having communication through email and through phone calls. So, I'm having struggled with my son at school regarding his behavior. He's in the Janet class. He's a first grade student. School signed up. They made a contract, friend's contract with him that he need to keep this done for other students. And a bad incident happened, and they have to make the decision to move my son from another classroom. But besides that, my son just got diagnosed with ADHD. He has an IP, and he was on the category of development delay. When we had the meeting last year, we asked the psych if he can be on the other category, right? Like other health empowerment or what is the EVD.
Yeah, other health, EBD is one of them that we talked
Yeah,
about, right?
yeah,
Or multiple, yes.
yes. And we had the meeting with the school for his amendment last week, and we also request an individual evaluation for him outside of the district. We got an email from the district yesterday, and they denied our request. However, today we received another email from the office from the state, and they said that they already opened a case for us, and they are gonna start with the process. And now I am confused and received I got an email yesterday from the school saying that our request has been denied, and today I received another email with the office saying that we have a case. So now I am confused. So I don't know exactly what do we need to do at this point. And because we make that community complaint through OSPI, now the school is communicating with us through the lawyer. So now I am confused.
Yeah, they're only communicating with you through the lawyer because you made a request for the IEE. They denied it, so they're required legally to put you in a due process. So what you heard was you heard from OAH in regards to a case number.
Yes.
If you want to remove your request for an IEE, that will automatically go away. And then you
Well, I don't want to. We would like to go through the process because we know that we through that process we can find more support for our son. But now that the district just denied, I don't know if this is something that we can do it without the district, or it has to be through the district.
Well, when you're talking specifically about the IEE, you and I can talk about that tomorrow. I'm not in meetings. I guess I
Okay.
have a couple in the
Sure.
afternoon, and I can walk you through what we need to do. I can support you in that process if you want to, and we can talk about that tomorrow.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you were here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, we just want to be part of the community because I am a parent, but I am a teacher. This is my second year as a teacher, so I don't know everything, but I would like to learn more about you guys because it seems like you guys have a lot of experience, and I'm having this difficult day with my son at school.
One of the things, and I haven't talked to Katie about this yet, that I'd like to do a presentation on, and I actually do it, but it's separately, is on the procedural safeguards, because that's how I got started, is reading those procedural safeguards they hand you or send you now in an email, because I read them and go, what are they actually saying? And it really helps. And the IEE is part of it, which is what made me think about that. So I think that would be very helpful. Not just, and again, when I talk about all of us need information, I'm talking about school districts too. So it's not just the families, it's the school teams.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, Helen.
Well, I appreciate Jennifer being here. Jennifer doing all the slides too. That was very helpful. I've never done Canva before. I've just done PowerPoint. So that
It was very pretty. You stepped her game up for her. I love Canva. It's so fun.
Yeah, let's do that. No, thank you for having us here. That was great. Thank you.
And all the behavioral information was really good. I love the new, the slides. I like the new flyer images too, because it was really helpful to see a graphic too, like the behavioral ones, taking away and adding. So good job.
Well, Katie, do you want us to send that over to you?
That would be amazing.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
We can do that. I have never done it in Canva, but if nothing else, I'm sure Jennifer can.
Oh my gosh.
She can
We'll find a way.
You download it and then you make it a file and a PDF.
Like I did
files,
That's
Helen.
right. I can do the files. I appreciate it, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.